Did Ms. Waterhouse make it clear to you that in the event that you were successful in assisting in her obtaining investors for the site, or perhaps purchasers for the site other than Mr. Leong, that she would look after you financially?
No, never.
So no,
Never.
Certainly no written agreement?
No
of that
agreement,
kind?
no suggestion whatsoever, never ever.
But it was still, at least in your mind, a hope or desire that that's what would happen in the event that you managed to assist in the sale or investment of the land. Is that right?
A hope, yes.
A hope that you take some steps, you assist in an investment being made or a sale being made, and at the end of the day, Ms. Waterhouse or perhaps someone else would pay a commission or other fee to you.
At some point,
right?
yes.
And so you had the fairly clear understanding with Mr. Leong that if Mr. Leong was able to sell the Waterhouse land, the Smart West land, to Country Garden, that you would receive a commission or other fee from Mr. Leong, correct?
He indicated that, yes.
And that would come out of Mr. Leong's fee that Ms. Waterhouse and her interests agreed to pay, is that right?
I agree, yes.
But are you saying that vis-a-vis Ms. Waterhouse yourself, you had a hope and a desire, but not necessarily as clear an understanding of the kind that you had with Mr. Leong?
I never had an understanding with Miss Waterhouse. Never ever did we have an agreement, a discussion. Never did she even suggest that was an outcome. Never ever.
Not to you, but
not to me. No.
Mr. Leong recounted a conversation he said he had with her, that she asked him who would look after you.
That's right. He did say that, and he told me that, but she never approached me and made that those comments or proposition.
I understand that, but in relation to that conversation you'd had with Mr. Leong, surely that gave you comfort that even if it wasn't a transaction Mr. Leong effected, but with yet another third party not yet identified, that she would hope for the same outcome for you in that respect too.
Yes.
I'm going to play now a call of the 14th of September 2017, which relates to the question I was asking you before about consular networks. It's 1765, not presently in evidence. I'll ask for that to be played. It's a call with Takawaka-san, who is a Japanese consul, or was a Japanese consul at that point in time, is that right?
A very nice man, yes.
Yes.
Takawaka-san. Darryl.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
How are you? I hope I'm not disturbing you.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Good.
Now is a better time. Yeah.
Good. Sorry it's been so hard to talk. Just, friend, in the conversation that we had at dinner a couple of nights ago, you mentioned that Badgerys Creek Airport, there were companies that were very interested in making some investments.
Not exactly, but I would say that there is some, not very, but there is some potential. Candidate.
But they were, they were major companies, correct?
Yeah, it's a major company.
So I've been asked by a friend of mine to do some matchmaking, and they've got a very large holding that has potential for a technology park, as well as service industry for the new airport. Quite a few hundred acres, a very big plot of land, and access to highways, all of those things. So they are seeking a partner, and either to partner or to sell. So they've got the land, they own the land, and they're ready to move. So we need to find. And I said, well, I went and spoke. I had dinner at the consul, and they suggested that Japan's interested. I said I would ring and ask, and that you might like to try and find one or two of the best potential partners and or buyers.
Yeah. Well, at least we can try. At least, of course, I cannot guarantee the success.
Of course not. I wouldn't
at least
expect
we
that.
can. Yeah.
I wouldn't expect that. But this friend who has the land is very keen. And when I said, well, Japanese expressed an interest after the Premier's visit, their eyes lit up and they said, Japanese, good to do business with.
Yeah. Okay. So what shall I do? I mean,
I think you've got to get your commercial people to find the companies that are expressing interest in the infrastructure network, and then you let me know, and I'll put them all together.
All right.
That's all we need to do. You need to do it rather quickly. I'll tell you for why. The Chinese are moving all over the place, and people are getting concerned that they've got too much influence, number one. Number two, that this important infrastructure is around the airport, and that they, I think, have a preference for some of our closer friends who we know we can rely on. You know what I'm telling you?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone from South Korea, a South Korean company or a Japanese company, is reliable, trustworthy, good to do business with, and in times of trouble, we can depend on you.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
But okay, I mean, but when you're talking about the airport, it is the airport itself, or I mean,
it's the land. It's the
supporting.
It's the land that supports the airport. So it's surrounding the airport, and there's hundreds of hectares. And it means long term it'll all be developed into service areas. It'll be developed into aircraft, freight, logistics, all of those things.
All right. So it is a construction of airport itself rather than supporting facilities, shall I say?
Well, not constructing the airport itself. It's constructing the support network for the airport.
Okay.
So the buildings that are around the airport, the warehouses, the freight hubs, all of those things, there's a potential for all of that. Plus, there's the potential for housing and development as well.
Yeah. All right.
So I can get you briefed if you like. I can have someone come and brief you and your people. You just need to let me know.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Maybe I might need some briefing. I mean, so that I can better explain.
Yeah.
The Japanese people. It depends. Japanese companies are in general very compartmentalized.
Yes.
I mean, we need to, push the right button.
Correct.
Is it about the construction, or is it about the housing, or is it about the finance, or is it about, let's say, details?
You need a briefing.
That's right.
Can you just send me a message when you're free for a briefing? Where the windows are, and
I'm available.
Yeah. And I will have someone come and meet you and have you fully briefed. And you might even bring one of your consuls as well that deals in this. And then if you can locate the partner, away we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Maguire, do you agree that the call you just heard provides an example of you using the consular network to which you had access as chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group with a view to pursuing your own private business interests?
Yes.
Who was Mr. Takawana?
He was the consul for Japan.
In Sydney?
Sydney, yes.
Someone who you had met in your capacity as chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group, is that right?
Yes.
In fact, in that role, it's very common to have meetings, lunches, dinners, etc. with consular officials, is that right?
Yes, there's a regular round of dinners and functions.
And so is it right that you took an opportunity in that connection, in other words, in connection with having dealings with the consular network, to raise this issue of potential Japanese investors in relation to a particular piece of land, correct?
Yes, correct.
There's a reference in the call to a friend of mine. Who was the friend of yours?
It would be Ms. Waterhouse or Mr. Leong. I can't recall which one I was referring to.
And I take it you didn't inform Mr. Takawaka-san that you had at least a hope that in the event that a Japanese investor might invest in the Smart West site, that you might end up with a fee?
No,
There's a reference in the call to Chinese interests having too much influence. Do you remember
Yes.
hearing that?
Mm.
Did you have the authorisation of anyone within government to complain to a consular official, in this case from Japan, regarding China having or not having too much influence in Australia?
No.
At least notionally, you were calling this consular official from Japan in your capacity as chair of the Asia Pacific Friendship Group, correct?
Yes. And a friend.
Well, you'd at least agree, wouldn't you, that it was quite wrong for you, in circumstances where you didn't make it clear to Mr. Takawaka that you were at least motivated, at least in part, by personal profit interests, to be saying something about the relationship between Australia or perhaps New South Wales and China without disclosing that at least one of the reasons that you're identifying that point is with a view to making money for yourself.
Yes, I'd agree.
You'd agree, wouldn't you, that you wouldn't have engaged in a call of the kind that we've just heard with Mr. Takawaka or indeed any other consular official, but for your hope that you would successfully assist Ms. Waterhouse in a sale or investment and then would receive a fee yourself, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, did you ultimately make any arrangements for Takawaka-san to meet with anyone in relation to the Smart West site?
I don't recall.
Let me help this way.
Do you want to tender that last? Sorry, were you going to say something, Mr. Maguire?
I don't recall what actually happened.
I'll assist you. I'll show you some documents that might assist
Thank
you. I'll next bring up Intercept 2063, which is an SMS, and while that's coming up, I tender Intercept 1765, call between Mr. Maguire and Mr. Takawaka, Takawaka, 14 September 2017.
Exhibit 367. It's just Mr. Takawana, isn't it?
Yes.
The san is some sort of expression of an honorific, adding san.
Son, Mr.
San means
son,
Mr. doesn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr.
Here is a message from Takawaka-san to you. You see there, good
Yes.
morning, Mr. Leong visited us yesterday. His briefing was very interesting. You see that there?
Yes, I see that.
So does that refresh your memory that you brokered a meeting between
Yes.
Mr. Takawaka and Mr. Leong to
Yes.
discuss the Smart West site?
Yes.
Now, did that brokerage end up in any investment so far as you know, so far as you recall?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, was this a genuine interest that you were raising with Mr. Takawaka, or was this a attempt to try and put commercial pressure on Country Garden to decide whether or not they wanted to be the purchaser of the site?
No, in my mind, it was a general attempt to get technology companies, as you know, Japanese and Koreans are some of the best, involved. That was the general idea of that area, the technology park. So it wasn't just for one specific country. The idea was to get technology from a number of them, and the Japanese was just one.
But around about that point in time, you're at least hopeful that the deal between Country Garden Australia and the Waterhouse interests would be successful, correct?
Yes.
And that you would receive a very substantial payment in the event that it was successful, correct?
Yes.
But are you saying you're in effect putting a few irons in the fire in the hope that if that deal didn't come off, there might be some other form of investment that might take
My
place?
understanding is there were several compartments in the way that this plan or this dream of Mr. Waterhouse's, Mr. Bill Waterhouse, would develop. There were certain industries in space and aerotechnology that they want to create a hub. There was accommodation. There was industrial area to service the airport with technologies as well. So it was compartments within a plan, from my recollection.